welcome back to your show. My show, Exactly Amara. This is your girl, Amara La Negra. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is a production of iHeart. Thank you for being my friend, for being my listener, for being my family, por estar presente in every episode. You guys make sure to give me those 5 stars. And if you don't forget to give me those 5 stars. Subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform and tell everybody, tell your cousin, tell your friend, tell your hermana, tell la vecina. Have you checked out Exactly Amara, the podcast on iHeart? Thanks to my Cultura podcast network. Bueno, you should, because the show is lit and she be talking some real stuff. I love the fact that every show, it keeps getting better and we have so many different conversations that are actually really impactful and do make a difference. Some are just for fun, some are informative, some are educational, and some are just real, like today. Today I want to talk about something, I think that we've spoken in so many occasions about mental health, and we've also spoken about sex. But we haven't spoken about it all together in one. I want to bring in my producer, my friend. He puts up with all my craziness. Alex, Alex, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you, Amara? I'm super excited to be on today. Like you mentioned, man, like we have spoken a lot about mental health, and how to prepare for ourselves to get better at that topic, right? We've also spoken about sex, because we love it. So today we're going to combine the two.
I don't know. I guess everybody does love sex, but I feel like also a lot of people, we don't talk about those that don't have a good relationship with sex, which is a lot of people. Even though that we live in a society where we're overly sexualized and sex does sell, and there's all this talk about being sensual and sexy and sex and dating and men and women and marriage and everything that's related to the couple aspect of it. But there's a lot of people that don't necessarily have a positive, outlook on sex.
Yeah, that's 100% today's topic. You hit the nail on the head because they kind of coincide with each other. You mentioned something on the top of the show just now that's really important. It's the fact that there has been people with different traumas or different levels of discomfort or whatever the case may be on their end that could really impact a sexual well-being.
I really think that society does put a lot of pressure on men and women when it comes to the whole sex thing. I'm not going to lie. And I'm saying it from the aspect of, there's a lot of women that can be very degrading to men, and that can put a lot of insecurity in a man. That affects a man's confidence. It affects the way that he sees himself. It affects his mental health. It affects the way that he interacts with other women. It affects his dating life, the way that he even goes out and communicates and socializes with women. That affects the same way that women that don't feel secure about their bodies, where they see themselves as being fat or too skinny, or my boobs are not high enough, or my butt, or my arms, or my this, will find 1,000 excuses to make us feel insecure about ourselves. Obviously, we live in a world where everything is monetized, and we have the beauty industry that monetizes off women's insecurities, and we cover it up with makeup, and we do surgeries, and we do this and we do that and all these other things. All these other things, and I'm talking about the physical aspect because unconsciously or unconsciously, the physical aspect affects your mental health. If you don't feel that you can find the right partner because of the way that you look and that's the only body that you have, if you don't feel confident when you're naked in front of someone, if you don't feel confident having sex with someone, all that affects your mental health, because now you start to doubt yourself. Now your insecurities come. Now you start to be more aggressive. Or you may start being more timid, or there's so many things that you can talk about when it comes to sex and mental health that I don't really think people put enough, light on it. What do you think?
In today's society, we try to preach and practice mental health habits, try to find inner peace, trying to find what really could possibly I don't want to say fix, because that's not the correct term, but how can something help you, mentally and get you out of a funk? There's so many programs out there to help too. But one of the things I want to ask you, Amara, right now, anything that has to do or the impacts on mental health, does that mess up an individual's sexual desire and arousal levels? Like, does that, the mental health impact moves its way from your head down to your nether regions, basically?
Yeah, of course. I agree 1,000%. And listen, nobody Nobody talks about it. And I feel like, coño, I'm glad that we're having this conversation because in many occasions, a lot of women and men feel as if they have issues because if your brain does not connect with your body parts, nothing is going to move. Nothing is going to get juicy.
Yeah.
Nothing is going to happen if you're not, attached, if you're not together. So I'll say this much. I used to be in a relationship, ladies. I used to be in a relationship where I was the breadwinner. I was the one who was really more empowered in the relationship. I loved many aspects of him. I loved many things that he did for me, but financially, he wasn't doing it. He was not bringing in nothing. And I didn't have a problem holding him down for a little bit. I'm going to hold you down. I'm going to have your back, yada, 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 so you can get on your feet. Toda la película. I want to be a good woman and hold my man. I wanted to do the whole fairy tale of like, oh, we met each other, when you were broke, and then we built together, right? But for some reason, when a woman doesn't see as a man as a provider, in many occasions, especially if you come from a more traditional, background or more traditional way of being raised, when you're not being seen as a provider, for some reason, there's a disconnect between my head and my vagina. The desert. Nothing is happening. If I'm stressed out about all the bills I got to pay, no hay dinero para luz. We can't go out to dinner. We can't even go to the movies. You got to be using coupons all the time. We can't, looking for the discount. When there's financial issues, that messes my mental health. And my mental health affects my vagina. So, this is a domino effect.
I'm glad you hit the nail on the head again. I'm glad you brought that up because, we're talking about the psychological factors that negatively impact your sexual experience and your pleasure. Boom. You hit the number one that we've had that I've looked up, and that is stress and anxiety. Stress and anxiety can very much interfere with sexual arousal and enjoyment. Like you just mentioned, worries, work pressure, financial concerns, or relationship issues.
Financial to me is one of the biggest ones. I know so many amazing couples who have literally not been able to survive, having financial issues. It doesn't matter how much they loved each other, how much they supported each other. When there is financial issues, there's no sex drive. Right? When you're super tired, because let's just say now that you have financial issues, now you may need to get an extra part-time job. You might need to get a side gig. Now you're so exhausted. Now you're so tired that the last thing you want to do is go home and have to bounce it for a whole half an hour on someone when you just want to lay down and go to sleep. So I know that finances affect a lot of the sex drive and the mental health and everything else. I also know as well that sometimes when we get upset and we're in a relationship, we can be very cruel with our words. And sometimes you have to be careful, ladies, men as well. When you're with your significant other and you get upset, ten mucho cuidado what you say. Because the things that you say, you can't take them back, right? Sometimes you want to hit below the belt just to hurt this person, even though you may love them, but you just wanted them to feel it. That affects mental health, and that mental health means his ding-a-ling ain't gonna go up. You know what I mean? And by the way, I know that we've spoken about this before, but have you ever faked it because you feel pressured to have to go?
Stressed?
Yeah, either that you're stressed or you feel pressure to accomplish the mission. Like my mind is not here right now because there's so many other things I'm thinking about, or I'm not here mentally right now. But I want to please my significant other, or I know that I should. It's the right thing to do.
And you don't want to hurt their feelings by just saying, hey, I don't want to do this or anything. Because now that you're implementing some thought into their head that maybe it's them, there's something wrong with them. And, they immediately start questioning. It's like a vicious circle. And, it's important because, mental health and sexual health are two very important things in our lives, right? As humans, sexual encounters with your significant other reduces stress. They can help reduce your stress levels. You need those mood boosting chemicals in your brain to kind of, get you up and going and kind of clear your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it's hard because you also mentioned body image issues.
Yep.
And people are just seeing like these gorgeous bodies everywhere and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that could essentially lead you down a path of thinking wrong about yourself. That ruins your mental health issues. That in turn ruins your sexual health issues because you're not getting yourself out there with your significant other because you have all these stresses of what you should look like and basically perform.
Yeah, but then I also feel that amongst each other, we shouldn't be so hard on each other.
Yes.
Because we can be very cruel to one another. There's a lot of men that I've seen them be like, oh, your boobs look a certain type of way, or I don't like that, or your butt looks like this, or your stomach turns me off, or your stretch marks, turn me off, or this and that. And let me clarify this as well for those women that have made beautiful children out of your body, because you are
Yes.
amazing blessing. And for those men that have been with these women that you, right, were part of the reason why her body, she gave her whole body up, right? This body transformation to create another human being, which is now your child, right? Let's be more loving and more caring and more nurturing and more careful with our words and the way that we present our feelings or the things that we like or dislike, because it can be very damaging, to a woman. It could be very damaging because you can't change it, right? You want to have your children and you love that, but you can't change the fact that now your skin may be saggy. You can't change the fact that now your boobs may not be as perky. You can't change the fact that now you may have stretch marks. You can't change many things, right? Or for those men that at one point, because I used to date, oh my gosh, once upon a time, I dated a guy that was like almost 400 pounds, and then he lost the weight. So when he lost the weight, there was a lot of extra skin, and there was a lot of stretch marks. There was a lot of everything, right? I am the type of person that I like people for who they are. I like people for their charisma, their personality, the way that they treat me, if they're funny, if they're social. I'm looking more at all those things more than I really am looking at the physical part. No matter how much I say it, especially being on these reality TV shows, people get so caught up on the beauty aspect of this person is fine, this person is high, but this person may be an asshole. This person may be a jerk. This person may not be a good person. This person can be many other things. God knows. I'm a different type of person. And when I was dating him for a really long time, he was very self-conscious about being naked in front of me because he felt like I was going to be extremely judgmental, And I was like, I don't care about that. You can fix that somewhat if you wanted to. You can go get surgery if you really wanted to. But away from that, if I had to be in a desert with someone for years to come, I'd rather be with you than anybody else because of who you are. And I think that we've lost that because we're so caught up in the physical part. Personally, I was one of those kids that growing up, my mom just loved to feed me and loved for everybody to see me all chunky. Mira que linda, que gordita, que whatever. And that also made me feel bad later on in life because once I started getting into high school and I was still chunky, I felt like now I'm starting to like boys and I want the boys to like me back. And then she would do things like, ¿Y quién te va a querer así de gorda? Tienes que bajarle peso. You're never going to be able to date anybody. Who's going to want a fat girlfriend?
I got a question for you for that then. So that stuff that happened to you in the past, has that affected your mental health being now in the future? Has that coincided with any type of your sexual health where you think that you need to cover up, the lights need to be off? Has that happened to you, or are you broken free from that and you're just like...
I am not broken free from it. And I also think it's because, one, social media. We live in a filtered world, right? Where we use filters, where we use, for the most part, especially women, where we use Photoshop, where we use Facetune, where we use all these damn, filters to change and try to perfect who we are. I work in an industry where women consistently, literally after giving birth in less than 3 months, are in a surgery table trying to get sucked out and tucked in and ribs out and boobs in and implants and, and then they expect you to look that way. I also live in a world where the man that see me on social media or all these other crap, they expect me to be exactly what they see or this fantasy without understanding that in many occasions, yes, I am that person, but also understand that that is part of my job and that is my image and that is Amara at work. Not Amara at home, right? They expect you to be perfect. It's like if you date a Victoria's Secret model, you expect to be with the Victoria's Secret model. You don't know how she looks, what she acts at home. She may be looking like a crackhead, no lashes, no hair extensions. Es un desastre. And you would be like, ew, I would never. But people like the fantasy. When you meet someone that's caught up in you are blase, when the lights are on, You may not be looking at that because obviously women, we look at all the things that supposedly men don't. But I'm like, oh my God, my armpits look a little dark. I should probably put some cream there.
Yeah, and that alone, like you just mentioned, is a mental health problem on the partner, on the other person too, because they're mentally thinking, and you got to be this certain way all the time, or this is who you are, or maybe they just get too caught up into it. That affects a male psyche in sexual health as well, because now this is this fake persona that they have in their head that they must always go after, right? They forget about the real person. And they forget about the whole aspect of, hey, that person is not always, this. And that goes along with like people who watch they say a lot of porn, kind of think that this is just, that's a mental health problem that affects your sexual health as well, because now you have this fantasy of how women should be, and women to men as well,
And you're right, because I'm not going to put his name out there, but he knows who he is when he hears this. But recently, I was dating, I don't know if I don't know what the hell's going on. But anyways, there's this man that was telling me that he likes his women to all have surgery. And I was like, oh, really? He's like, every woman I've dated all have surgery. And if they didn't have, I always encouraged them to get surgery. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, because I personally like the hard boobs right up, like close to the chin, the small waist, the big butt. Like he likes that really fake body. And he's like, I like that. I like my women to look fake. And I'm like, you like them blow dolls looking like, and I was like, why do you see, here comes like me trying to get deep into like, so what caused you to like this, right?
Yeah.
And he was like, I don't know, I've always liked this. I was like, do you watch a lot of porn? That was the first thing that came into my mind. He was like, when I was younger, yeah. I was like, well, maybe unconsciously without you even realizing. Yeah. The amount of porn that you watch created this illusion, this stigma of what a woman should look like. And that is what turns you on. And that is not the truth. I'm not saying you can't find you a woman like that, because he was telling me, oh, you need to get your boobs done and do this and do that. And I was like, wait, what? I don't mind doing it, but it shouldn't be something that I have to do in order for you to like me. But then that's how your mental health is set up. You're mentally, you got so caught up into the whole porno thing. And he had like a whole list of things. You have to sound like this. You have to do certain things. You have to do the porn hot dog boob things where you do this. I was like, oh no. This goes really far. And I also, going back to men, we are now finding men that if you're doing it for you, amen. But not because you're mentally in a space where you feel as if you have to. We find now that the beauty industry is now sucking men in as well with, we knew the skin products and all that before, but now there's so many more men now getting lipo, getting their abs stitched, getting all these things, which is fine. I love it. I live for it. Well, what is the next trend? Because every couple of years, we first had the big boobs. We then had the natural boobs. We first had the really snatched waist. We now have the really big lips. Then we had, the big butts. Now it's the natural. It's too much. It's like, when do you become normal and accept who you are as a person and embrace that and be accepted and taken for being who you are and just love that? Personally, when it comes to my sex and mental health, I have some things I haven't been able to overcome. And I've spoken about it in the past. And unfortunately, no matter how much therapy you take, no matter how much you do yoga, you feel that you've overcome it, you always get flashbacks. You could be fine. And I'm sure that you can relate, Alex, because, you were at war at one point and you could be fine, but there'll always be certain moments where flashback, and it's happened to me even when I've had sex, where all of a sudden everything is great. And then I won't say it to the person, but if they're being very aggressive or if they're doing certain things, I may have a flashback of like, Yeah. And there's certain things you just can't repair no matter how much you try. And that's okay. We all have to learn how to cope with our experiences in life, how to overcome them the best of our abilities, seek help. Yeah. It's okay to seek help and just figure out how to do it. But just me being really vulnerable and being exactly Amara, that was one of the most, traumatizing moments of my life. And I've been carrying that with me. And I'm sure that from here to the day that I die, this man doesn't know that his action, him trying to satisfy himself, he doesn't know that what he did to me affected this young girl who now is a woman, who now is a mother for the rest of my life. And that messed up my sex, the way that I perceive sex, and it messed up my mental health. I'm okay. I don't feel like I'm damaged. Like, I'm not the first woman to have gone through it and you move on, but it does affect. I just wanted to put that out there because if there's any listeners out there that have been through similar experiences or have been through something, I just want you to know that been there, done that. You're not alone. There's ways to find help. There's ways to overcome it and move forward in life. And it doesn't mean that you're broken. It doesn't mean that just because, your mental health is not at 100%, it doesn't mean that you can't get there, And don't feel that you can't get back into your sex drive. You can't get back in tune with your body. You can't not reset and start again because you can. And I just wanted to put that out there.
I'm glad you shared that because it's very important, I think, for anyone who's listening to this episode or, just you speak in general, that they know that there's always a way to get help. And you have put that out there. To kind of wrap up today's episode, I wanted to kind of talk about how individuals and couples alike could promote an open and honest communication about, the mental health and sexual well-being of their relationships. And I'll read these really quickly and you tell me your opinions on it, Amara. Yeah. The first one that I have here is create a safe and non-judgmental environment. I
agree 100%. Yes.
Right? Establish a safe and non-judgmental space where both partners can feel comfortable expressing their thoughts, concerns, and desires. And you have spoken about this before, and you said it earlier on today that should be something that, you should be open and honest with each other. The second one I have here is initiate conversations. You just did that just now. You initiated a conversation with the listeners and myself. Your thoughts on initiating conversations?
I think it's important to just have those moments. One day when you're with your significant other, you guys could just be having wine, chilling, or a moment where you know that you're both at peace and just start that conversation of like, babe, I'd like to know, have you ever been through anything in your past? Or let me tell you about me and figure out ways where you both can connect and just be open, vulnerable, and talk about your sexual experiences. I think is the best way to actually connect the proper way.
I love that. And active listening.
Yep.
Correct. So you got to have someone that should be able to listen to you, whether it's a professional that you go seek or a family member or a friend or like us right now. We're talking. I'm listening to you. I'm actively listening to what you're telling me. Use the I statement. This is a big one. When discussing these sensitive topics, use I to express your own feelings. You did that the minute we started talking about your personal experience. You immediately said I. That approach helps avoid sounding like you're blaming anyone because you kind of just you made it easier to talk about it, right? You're not just immediately going, well, there's M or F or blah, blah. No, you said I. You acknowledge that, you want to let this out,
right.
Correct?
Correct. And that's just how I feel. And I think that is also important to, when you're talking to somebody else, you want them to know where you're coming from. What's your point of view? How do you feel? It's not about blaming anybody. It's not about talk about from your point of view. You want the other person to put themselves in your shoes.
I love that. We could practice empathy and emotional support, right? We show empathy and other emotional support to our partners when discussing mental health and sexual well-being. It'll validate their experience. You could acknowledge their feelings. I believe that that's a big one, whether it's an individual speaking to someone else or, friendly conversation between you and your partners. I think that's a big one. The last one is...
And wait, hold on. I want to speak about amongst that because at some point when I told my mother about it later on, years down the line, my mom was angry at me. And I felt like, hello, wait, what? This is not how this was supposed to turn out. She was angry at me and she made it about her. She turned it into her. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you didn't trust me to tell me? I've been a good mother. I was a good example. And you can't do that. When somebody's telling you about their traumas and what they've been through, you want to listen as much as possible. You want to be as supportive as possible. You want to understand what traumas they went through, how that experience was for them. Don't make it about you. Don't force them. Why didn't you call the cops? What? And your tone and delivery is very important. So don't sound angry.
I love that. So to add on to that, guys, remember that promoting open communication requires a lot of patience, understanding, an ongoing effort.
Yes.
You know, it's a journey of mutual growth and support. And, you know, by creating safe spaces for this type of dialogue, couples and individuals can strengthen their bond and promote overall relationship satisfaction, which is what this topic was about. You know, mental health, sexual health, how they combine, and, you know, how to get satisfaction out of it.
Listen, Alex, if there's anything that my listeners can take with them, you know, today after this episode is, listen, mental health is a real thing. And I know that we've spoken about it in many occasions individually, but sex and mental health is a thing. Don't feel like you're the only one. We all have our different levels of mental health when it comes to sex. We all have different perspectives when it comes to sex, the way that we see our bodies, the way that we see others. Don't be so hard on yourself either. Learn to love the body that you're in, because it's the only body that you'll have for the rest of your life. And if you ever do anything, do it because you want to, not because you feel pressured by your significant other, not because you're trying to please your significant other. You do it for you. Whether you want to modify your body, whether you want to go to the gym, whether you want to turn on the lights or turn them off. Learn to embrace you. Communication is key. Learn to be vocal in a way that is understanding to others, the way that you feel, the ways that you like to be treated, the ways that you like to be touched, the way that you like to be catered. Communication is important because you can't expect women. We do that a lot. You should know. No, you should talk so that the other person can understand. You know, there's a lot to it, but if you ever have to seek for help, don't feel as if there's anything wrong with you. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to, maybe you might want to have a little glass of wine before you start to loosen up. That's okay too. I feel like sometimes we're just so hard on each other. You know, we have to be more and more loving to each other because everybody's been through something in life. You know, everybody is fighting their own demons. Just be more nurturing, be more loving, be more caring, and learn to communicate. I have loved this episode. I have loved this topic because I think it was a very important conversation to have. It was exactly Amara. It was exactly Alex. And I'm so grateful to have you here.
Thank you. And I love when you get to share with the audience something that they could relate to and they can connect to. So, you know, my hat's off to you.
Amen to
always
that.
Being open.
Amen to that. And guys, thank you all for being part of Exactly Amara. Make sure to find me on YouTube. Catch my show by searching for my Cultura podcast on YouTube and clicking on Exactly Amara. Follow me on Instagram at Amara La Negra ALN, Amara La Negra ALN. I use more Instagram than I use Twitter and everything else. It's actually my favorite social media platform. Remember that this has been a production of iHeart's My Cultura Podcast Network. For more podcasts from iHeart, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. This is your girl, Amara La Negra, and you just heard Exactly Amara.